86 years after the legendary disappearance of Amelia Earhart, the world finally has an answer. But it's an answer so grim, so haunting that some wish the mystery had remained unsolved. Amelia wasn't just the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. She was the embodiment of fearlessness, modernity, and the unstoppable force of a woman refusing to be told what she could and couldn't do. Her disappearance in 1937, while attempting to circum the globe, turned her from a record breaker to an enigma. For decades, she lingered like a ghost in our collective imagination, the daring aviatrix lost at sea, perhaps surviving on a deserted island, perhaps captured by the Japanese, perhaps even returning to America under a new name, hidden from the world. These theories swirled through books, documentaries, and dinner table debates, fed by grainy photographs and shadowy rumors that seemed to sprout every few years. But the latest discoveries and forensic evidence paint a picture that is far more chilling than even her harshest fate-seekers imagined. When Amelia and her navigator Fred Noonan vanished over the Pacific on July 2, 1937, the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard launched what was at the time the largest air and sea search in history. They found nothing. No plane, no wreckage, not even an oil slick. The official story settled into the idea that they ran out of fuel and crashed into the vast ocean. But that neat explanation never sat well with historians and Earhart enthusiasts. Over the years, a haunting clue emerged from the remote Nikomoro Island, once called Gardner Island in the western Pacific. In 1940, a British colonial officer discovered skeletal remains, along with a woman's shoe, a sextant box, and a bottle of what was thought to be but in an astonishing twist, the bones were shipped to Fiji and then declared to belong to a male of European descent. So the link to Amelia was discarded. For decades, the trail went cold. The bones vanished. The island was left to the crabs, and the mystery grew larger than life. But in the 21st century, forensic anthropology made a quiet, stunning comeback. A scientist re-examined the original measurements and concluded with compelling evidence that the bones could very well have belonged to Amelia. That was the first grim piece of the puzzle. Then came the expeditions teams from the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, Tiger, and other organizations. Ventured back to Nikomoro, they found fragments of aircraft aluminum consistent with Earhart's Lockheed Electra. They found a piece of plexiglass matching the plane's windows. And they found traces of American women's cosmetics, all in a place where none should have been. But the worst discovery lay not in the artifacts themselves, but in the harrowing tale. They suggested that Amelia Earhart did not perish in a dramatic mid-air crash, nor was she captured and executed. Instead, the evidence suggests she survived the landing, stranded on an unforgiving coral atoll, where she and Fred Noonan clung to life as long as they could. Imagine it. Amelia, the fearless pilot who had crossed oceans alone, now reduced to a castaway, the searing sun blistering her skin by day, the bone-chilling winds cutting through her at night. Coconut crabs, massive armor-clad creatures with claws that can crack bones scuttling through the underbrush, perhaps drawn to her meager scraps of food, or worse, to her remains when she could fight no longer. Forensic evidence points to the chilling possibility that Amelia died slowly, not from the crash, but from dehydration, starvation, or exposure. And what became of her bones? The island's voracious coconut crabs likely scattered them, leaving only fragments for that colonial officer to find years later. The cruel irony is that Amelia Earhart, the woman who braved the skies when women were told to stay grounded, ended her life on a sliver of land invisible to the searchers who flew overhead. She was so close to being found, so tantalizingly close. Yet the technology, the will, or perhaps the political priorities of the time failed her. Meanwhile, Fred Noonan, her trusted navigator, likely suffered the same grim fate. Some believe he may have succumbed to injuries from a rough landing or infection, leaving Amelia alone on that merciless atoll. This version of the story supported now by sonar images of debris, DNA tests on fragments, and old radio distress calls that crackled across the Pacific in the weeks following her disappearance shatters the romantic image of Earhart slipping gracefully into the sea or being held in some spy drama scenario. The truth is worse. She was abandoned by the world she had inspired, left to face her final days in isolation and despair. But the heartbreak doesn't stop there. In recently uncovered diaries and government memos, it's become clear that some in the Navy suspected that she might have survived the landing. Yet, they didn't prioritize a focused search of Nikomoro. Historians now believe that shortwave radio operators received over 100 transmissions, possibly from Amelia's downed aircraft before its batteries died or were washed away by the tide. Civilian radio enthusiasts heard a woman's voice crying out, giving partial coordinates, begging for help, but the coordinates were vague, the Pacific vast, and the official search effort was winding down. If true, that means that for days, perhaps even weeks, Earhart's desperate calls for help went unanswered. To know that the greatest female aviator of her era spent her last moments calling into the void, her words bouncing across the waves, while ships steamed obliviously past, is almost too painful to bear. Of course, there will always be those who cling to alternative theories that she was captured by the Japanese and executed as a spy, or that she returned to America under a false identity. But these stories now feel like fairy tales, comforting lies to soften the blow of the truth. The island evidence is compelling, corroborated by the items found, the Ray-evaluated bone data, and the radio logs. It doesn't make for a glamorous Hollywood ending. Instead, it is raw and deeply human. The final chapter of a woman who refused to be limited by what society expected of her, but who, in the end, was just as vulnerable as any of us to nature's unforgiving hand. What does this revelation mean for her legacy? It makes her not less heroic, but more so. To understand that Amelia fought to survive, possibly for days or weeks with no hope of rescue, transforms her from a symbol into something more profound, a testament to grit, endurance, and an unyielding spirit, even in the face of oblivion. Her story was never about the easy victory. It was always about the attempt. She flew into the unknown, knowing the risks, craving the horizon. In the end, that same horizon swallowed her, but her legend never died. It is only now, nearly 9 decades later, that the final puzzle pieces are falling into place. And so the next time someone tells you that Amelia Earhart simply vanished, remember what really happened. She didn't just disappear, she survived. She fought, and she waited for a rescue that would never come. The island that became her final prison still stands in the middle of the endless Pacific, battered by storms, haunted by ghost stories, and crawling with the same monstrous crabs that likely scattered her bones. She rests there still in spirit, if not in flesh. A permanent reminder of how human triumph and tragedy can coexist in one heartbreaking ending. In solving this mystery, we have not found comfort. We have found a deeper sadness, but we've also found the truth. And for Amelia, who devoted her life to pushing past the clouds to see what lay beyond, maybe the truth, however bleak, is exactly what she would have wanted us to find at last.